So a lot of you are probably in or about to enter your summer break right now, and you have a lot of extra time, and what better way to spend that extra time than playing some PlayStation 4 games? And in this video, I want to take a look at 10 underrated PS4 games that you should play over your summer break. These are games that maybe a few of you have checked out, but at least one or two, or probably a lot of these games on this list, you have yet to give a shot to. And you really should, and with the majority of these games, you can get them rather cheap right now as well. And there's quite a bit of variety on this list as well, whether you're into Japanese games, Western games, indie games, or everything in between. I've got you covered, so let's get right into this. First up, we've got Sleeping Dogs: The Definitive Edition. This was originally a PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 game released back in 2012. It was later remastered onto the PlayStation 4 in the form of Sleeping Dogs: The Definitive Edition. This version, of course, came with technical enhancements as well as all of the downloadable content, and this is such a fantastic game that unfortunately just did not do commercially well enough for Square Enix to justify publishing a sequel, but it's still such a good game, worth playing. A lot of people compare it to GTA in Hong Kong, and it's definitely not like that at all. It's more focused on its hand-to-hand combat, and it has a more contained world. Yes, it is open world, however, it's not as massive as, say, a GTA 4 or a GTA 5. It does have a good amount of content to it, but you're really getting into this game for the great story, the great characters, and the awesome combat. And on sale, I've seen this game as low as $4 and change, so it's definitely a game worth checking out, and a relatively lengthy experience as well.
Whatever it takes, you remember that?
Next up, we have SOMA, a game from Frictional Games, the guys that also are famous for the Amnesia titles. They also did Penumbra, and SOMA was their latest game released back in 2015. SOMA takes place in an underwater research facility known as Pathos 2, and it's very much not focused on its gameplay at all. It's very light on the gameplay. The gameplay that is in the game is more stealth-oriented, but I think that works with a survival horror game. You play as a rather weak person compared to all the other beings in the game, but the game is very psychological. It's more focused on puzzle solving and immersion, and this is a game that I found it very easy to get immersed into. Released back in 2015, another game a lot of gamers have forgotten about. Maybe you haven't checked it out, but if you're a fan of survival horror games and a game that really sticks with you for a little bit, give SOMA a look. Another early PlayStation 4 downloadable title that I have to recommend is Velocity 2X. Velocity 2X is a shoot-'em-up game with a lot of diversity in its gameplay, and what you'll notice about Velocity 2X right from the get-go is this is an incredibly stylish game. While it's not a technical juggernaut in the traditional sense, its stylization and presentation with more simplistic visuals is so well done that it adds another layer to the game. There's over 50 levels, and there's quite a bit of replayability in Velocity 2X as well. If you're a fan of engaging shoot-'em-ups from side-scrolling and the top-down form, you're gonna enjoy Velocity 2X quite a bit. Another game that on sale you can get it rather cheap. Its listed price is $20, but on sale I'm sure you could get it for less than $10. Next up, we have Mad Max, done by Avalanche Studio, a studio that's definitely in the news right now. They're releasing Just Cause 4 later this year. Next year, they have Rage 2 in the works, and of course, they have a new IP in Generation Zero in development as well. A game some people want to see a follow-up to, however, is 2015's Mad Max, done by Avalanche Studios, but unfortunately, it just didn't do that well from a commercial sense. It was released on September 1st, 2015, the same day that Metal Gear Solid 5 was released, so yeah, you can imagine how that turned out. And while I wouldn't say Mad Max was quite as good as that game, it was a great open world game in its own right. And one notable thing about Mad Max is this game runs incredibly. It is a buttersmooth 60 frames per second. Now, the visuals aren't anything to write home about. It is set in a barren wasteland, so you could understand how they were able to achieve a higher frame rate, but still, the performance is excellent. The combat is very reminiscent of, say, a Batman Arkham game, and that's a great thing. It's very satisfying, and the story does pick up throughout the game. Another game that's relatively cheap these days, so I would recommend you to give it a look.
That rule the wasteland and endure the unpredictable elements of nature. There are dangerous factions that roam the roads, dwell underground, and rule.
Another personal favorite of mine has to be Oxenfree. Oxenfree was a game done by Night School Studio, a studio you probably haven't heard of, but they do have developers that worked on some of the Telltale experiences, and when you play Oxenfree, you can see that shine through. This is a very story-driven game about a group of teenagers that go on vacation on an island. It's a coming-of-age story that I found very relatable. If you're a little bit older of a gamer, this will make you very nostalgic, and the interactions between the characters are very realistic. They actually made the characters be able to sound like humans instead of synthetic AI creations, and that really does a lot for the game. Of course, things do go awry. They introduce supernatural beings, but overall, the story is still very engaging, and I would highly recommend you to give Oxenfree a look. At this point on sale. You can pick it up for around $4.99.
A lot as a kid, right? You used to come here a lot as a kid.
Something's wrong.
Want to mention another personal favorite of the channel, and that is Pillars of Eternity Complete Edition. Now, this is a game that's more associated with PC gaming. However, Pillars of Eternity did see a console release as well, and I do want more PS4 owners to check out the game because, yes, while there is a bit of a learning curve attached to it, it's not your typical big budget console RPG. There's a lot of reading. Not all of the dialogue is voice acted, unfortunately. But after you get past those elements, this is an absolutely immersive experience with a great story, a lot of gameplay, and just an excellent RPG all around. Of course, Pillars of Eternity 2 did release on PC, and the console version is coming later on. And what's great about Pillars of Eternity 2 and why I think that game will be more accessible to console players is because that game is fully voice acted, and that is pretty significant. But for now, I still recommend you to give Pillars of Eternity the Complete Edition a look. This version does include the base game as well as the White March Part 1 and 2 expansions. Still a bit expensive. It goes for around $19.99, but still for that price, it's absolutely worth it.
Maybe we can stop it too.
Next up, I wanted to mention another game that's more associated with PC gaming, and that is the real-time tactics game in Shadow Tactics Blades of the Shogun. The game is loosely set in Japan's Edo period. A new shogun has unified Japan after years of war, but things go awry and you engage in all-out combat. Strategy games usually aren't known for their superb visuals, but Shadow Tactics Blades of the Shogun is one of those games that I think they get the design on point, not only because of the great setting, but this is an incredibly colorful game. And if you're even remotely a fan of strategy games, I feel like Shadow Tactics Blades of the Shogun is one that's gone a little under the radar. It's not a strategy game that many people talk about. Usually, even on console, you hear more so about XCOM and games like that. Shadow Tactics came out to little fanfare, but it's a game absolutely worth playing, especially if you are a fan of the time period and the setting. There is a lot of fun to be had with this one. It is a relatively recent release, coming out mid last year, so a little expensive still, but again, with this title, I would say it's worth it. Next up, we have a franchise that I like to give a mention whenever I could because it is so underrated, and that is Danganronpa, and I have to recommend the Danganronpa 1 and 2 Reloaded collection. This collection includes the first two Danganronpa games, and you definitely want to play these games in order. Danganronpa 3 kind of starts its own story, so if you want to play that standalone, you can, but with Danganronpa 1 and 2, you definitely want to play 1 and then play 2. But these games are such awesome visual novels. Yes, these are strictly story-driven games. There's light gameplay with the detective elements, but you're really going into these games for the story, but the story is absolutely incredible. The story is so hard to explain because it is so zany, but after you play it for like an hour or two, you are going to be absolutely hooked on it. And essentially what it is it's a murder mystery death game, but just me saying that doesn't do it justice. Give the game a look for yourself. If you can get past the zany Japanese aesthetics, or if you're into that already, you are going to find a story that is absolutely hooking from start to finish. And yeah, I think I've done the best job selling it that I can. Danganronpa is fantastic, and if you enjoy these games, of course, give Danganronpa V3 Killing Harmony a look as well.
Murder took place in Makoto's room.
In the bathroom. The killer must have taken her by surprise while she was in the bathroom. She didn't even have a chance to resist.
Next up, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. Of course, when you think of the monster franchises, you're gonna gravitate towards Pokemon, but on PlayStation, we don't have a Pokemon game, so how about a Digimon game? Well, I'm not gonna say that Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth has the same amount of cachet as, say, a Pokemon game, but it is a very good JRPG in its own right. Think of it as a very traditional Japanese RPG. Don't go into it with that Pokemon element, carry them over from game to game and really build a roster. It is more of a traditional JRPG with the Digimon aesthetic attached to it, but being very nostalgic with Digimon, I found myself enjoying the game even more. If you just look at the fundamentals of it being a JRPG, it's good, nothing amazing, but you add that Digimon fandom in there as well, and you are going to enjoy this game a lot more. There was a sequel released as well, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth Hacker's Memory. That game reused a lot of assets from Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, so I would play Cyber Sleuth first, and if you enjoy it, pick up Hacker's Memory as well. And finally, whenever I talk about underrated games, it seems like somehow I have to mention Valkyria Chronicles, and Valkyria Chronicles Remastered is absolutely a must-play. Now, this is a tactical JRPG, however, even though it being a Japanese game, I feel like this is a game that a lot of Western gamers can appreciate. There's a great watercolor art style, the story isn't anything crazy, it doesn't even use a lot of the Japanese zaniness, it's just a really good war story, and then you have the great strategy gameplay on top of that as well, and it's just a complete game all around. This title was originally released back in 2008 on the PlayStation 3. Unfortunately, it commercially didn't do all too well. We got a Valkyria Chronicles 2 on the PSP. We never even got Valkyria Chronicles 3 over here in the States. But luckily, Sega stayed committed to the franchise. Valkyria Chronicles Remastered did well enough to justify Valkyria Chronicles 4 being released over here. And that game has a sizable amount of anticipation right now. And if you want to see where that's coming from, definitely give Valkyria Chronicles Remastered a look. It's a budget title. You can usually get it for less than $20, and you're getting 40 to 50 hours of gameplay with it. It's a great game, and again, a title that I would definitely recommend to not only fans of JRPGs, but if you are more of a fan of your Western titles, this could be a great gateway title into Japanese titles as well. So that is going to conclude this one. 10 awesome underrated PlayStation 4 games that you should check out over your summer break. There are so many games, so many underrated titles. The PS4 has just had hundreds upon hundreds of games released, and with that many games, you can't expect gamers to play all of them, but some of them I feel like you guys should definitely go back and check out, and I feel like I brought light to a lot of them. Sound off with your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.